For more than 4 decades, one silhouette has become almost inseparable from American naval aviation. Twin tails, folding wings, massive leading-edge extensions, and landing gear built to survive what amounts to a controlled crash onto the pitching steel deck of an aircraft carrier. The Hornet was never supposed to become what it became. It all started as a descendant of a lightweight fighter derivative of the F-5 in the form of the YF-17 for the Air Force's LWF or lightweight fighter competition. Ultimately, the Air Force did not choose the YF-17. It famously lost out to the YF-16. And the story would have ended there, but the Navy saw something different. After some modifications and further testing, that rejected design became the A-18 Hornet, then the larger, longer-range Super Hornet, aka the Rhino, and eventually an entire family of aircraft capable of fighting enemy jets, striking targets hundreds of miles away, hunting radar sites, jamming air defenses, refueling other fighters, and of course, defending the fleet. But that extraordinary versatility also created a problem. Because the better the Hornet and Super Hornet became at doing everything, well, the more the Navy asked it to do, and the more platforms it ultimately replaced. Today, the Rhino finds itself in one of the most fascinating periods of its entire career. You see, up to this point, engineers have spent years giving it new computers, new sensors, reduced radar signatures, advanced targeting systems, and capabilities that would have seemed almost science fiction when the original Hornet flew in the 1970s. But technology can only outrun time and physics for so long. As we know, airframes age, threats evolve, and carrier operations remain brutally unforgiving. And in the skies and seas where the Super Hornet operates today, mistakes can cost tens of millions of dollars or much more. So in this special PilotPhotog compilation, we're going all the way back to where the Hornet story began. We'll see how a lightweight fighter that few expected to succeed became the backbone of American carrier aviation. We'll explore some of the strangest and most advanced Hornets ever built, including a thrust vectoring prototype. We'll also examine today's Super Hornet's hidden capabilities. And eventually, we'll follow the Rhino into the kind of operations that reveal what happens when decades of engineering collide with the chaos of real-world warfare. This is the story of how the United States Navy built one fighter to do almost everything, and then discovered just how much it could ask of it and beyond. Let's take a look. PilotPhotog.com. Act 1. From Hornet to Rhino. The F-18 is a multi-role, twin-engine, supersonic, carrier-capable fighter and attack aircraft. Introduced initially as the Hornet, the F-18 serves in the United States Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Forces of several nations. The F-18 is also used by the U.S. Navy Flight Demonstration Squadron, also known as the Blue Angels. Notable features of the F-18 include twin tails, folding wings, a tail section that has vertical stabilizers forward of the elevators, a unique extended wing design with leading edge extensions or LEX, reinforced landing gear for carrier operations, and wingtip missile racks. Over the course of its lifespan, the F-18 has evolved into a true multi-role aircraft, serving as a fighter, ground attack aircraft, electronics war platform, and even aerial refueling tanker. The F-18 was built to replace the Navy's aging A-4, A-7, and Marine F-4s while serving alongside as a complement to the F-14. Before we go any further, it's important to note that this video covers the F-18 up to the C and D versions of the Hornet. I'll be making a separate video on the F-18 E and F Super Hornet, and be sure to subscribe so that you can watch that video as soon as it comes out. Alright, so now let's look at the specifications for the F-18 C and D Hornet. The F-18 internally carries the 6-barrel 20mm M61 Vulcan cannon, which can fire 6,000 rounds a minute, making it effective against air, ground, and naval targets. In addition, the F-18 has 9 external hardpoints, which can carry a total load of over 13,000 pounds. The distribution of these 9 hardpoints are as follows. 2 are on the wingtips, 4 under the wing, and 3 under the fuselage. Since the F-18 is a multi-role fighter attack aircraft, the combination of weapons the Hornet can carry is extraordinary. For example, for air-to-air engagements, the F-18 can carry heat-seeking AIM-9 Sidewinders, radar-guided AIM-7 Sparrows, or radar-guided AIM-120 AMRAAMs. When it comes to air-to-surface missiles, the F-18 can equip AGM-65 Mavericks, AGM-88 HARM anti-radar missiles, the AGM-154 Joint Standoff Weapon, and the anti-ship AGM-84 Harpoon, just to name a few. Additionally, the F-18 can carry freefall bombs and rockets ranging from the 500-pound Mark 82s, CBU-87 cluster bombs, to the Paveway series of laser-guided bombs. Support and defensive options include external fuel tanks, chaff and flare dispensers, and the advanced lightning targeting pod. This list is by no means exclusive. In fact, an entire video could be made on F-18 loadout options and combinations. Let me know if you'd like to see that in a future video in the comments below. When it comes to targeting and tracking, the F-18 carries the AN/APG-73 radar, which is an improved version of the AN/APG-65 system. This improved version provides the F-18 with an excellent air-to-air radar, which includes a track while scan or TWS mode. The TWS mode gives the F-18 fire and forget capability, meaning it can lock a target, fire a missile, and seek another target while the missile independently tracks its target. The radar also has a RAID assessment mode, which permits radar separation of closely spaced targets, allowing the F-18 to differentiate and engage both. In addition to potent air-to-air features, this system also incorporates high-resolution ground radar tracking, which allows for accurate detection of ground or naval targets. This allows the F-18 to lock onto ground targets that may be attempting to hide amongst ground clutter. This radar system has not only proven itself, it is also designed to be very easy to maintain and operate. Seeking to replace its aging A4s, F4s, and A7s, the US Navy initiated the Naval Fighter Attack Experimental, or VFAX, program in 1973 to acquire a multi-role aircraft that could replace the 3 legacy aircraft types. One other requirement was that the new aircraft had to be less expensive and easier to operate than the F-14, which was already proving to be difficult to maintain. A big advocate of the VFAX program was Admiral Kent Lee, whose experience as both a fighter and attack pilot made him uniquely qualified for the role of championing a multi-role fighter. After briefly considering low-cost versions of the F-14 and F-15, Secretary of Defense James R. Schlesinger ordered the Navy to consider the 2 finalists in the Air Force Lightweight Fighter or LWF program. These 2 finalists were the YF-16 Fighting Falcon and the YF-17 Cobra. And even though the YF-16 had already been adopted by the Air Force, the Navy did not like the idea of flying on one engine over water. Ruling out the YF-16, the Navy asked Northrop and McDonnell Douglas to further develop the YF-17 Cobra into a carrier-capable aircraft. After extensive redesign and enhancements, the new aircraft was designated the FA-18 and given the name Hornet. The Hornet's modifications included strengthening the undercarriage, airframe, and tailhook to help withstand punishing carrier operations. Additionally, folding wings were incorporated to save on deck space. Since naval operations typically involve long flights over water, fuel capacity was increased by over 4,000 pounds. To help increase payload capacity, wings and stabilizers were also enlarged. Furthermore, the flight control system was upgraded to a quadruple redundant fly-by-wire system, the first of its kind to be installed in a production fighter. The Hornet was among the first aircraft to make extensive use of multifunction displays or MFDs. Using multiple MFDs, Hornet pilots can choose between fighter or attack modes, or both at the push of a button. This ability is known as a force multiplier since it allows the same aircraft to switch roles on the fly in a dynamically developing scenario. The first F-18 was introduced in September of 1978 with blue on white colors. On one side of the aircraft was marked Navy, and the other side Marines. The first operational Hornet was delivered to the Marine Squadron VFMA 314, aka the Black Knights, on January of 1983. The Navy took delivery of its first Hornet in January of 1984 as part of VFA 25, also known as the Fist of the Fleet. The Hornet has proven to be a reliable, easy-to-maintain multi-role aircraft. Initially operated by the U.S. Navy and Marines, the F-18 has also been exported to Australia, Canada, Finland, Kuwait, Malaysia, Spain, and Switzerland. Since no other country uses the F-18 for carrier operations, all export versions are sold without the automatic carrier landing system. Additionally, Canada was the first and is the largest export customer today. And finally, NASA also used a modified F-18 as a high alpha research vehicle, or HARV, to test controlled flight at high angles of attack. This F-18 ultimately produced stable flight at 70 degrees angle of attack, where the previous maximum had been 55 degrees. F-18s have been in continuous global deployment since 1985, establishing a reputation as a versatile, effective, and easy-to-maintain combat aircraft. The F-18's first combat action was in April 1986, where elements from the USS Coral Sea flew suppression of enemy air defenses, or SEAD, missions against Libyan air defenses during Operation Prairie Fire and an attack on Benghazi as part of Operation El Dorado Canyon. During the Gulf War of 1991, the F-18 proved its multi-role capabilities. On the first day of the war, Navy pilots Lieutenant Commander Mark Fox and his wingman, Lieutenant Nick Mongilio, were sent from their carrier to bomb an airfield in southwest Iraq. On their way to the target, they were warned by an E-2C of approaching MiG-21 fighters. While still carrying 4 2,000-pound bombs, the F-18s each shot down the 2 MiGs and then returned to their bombing mission. Having successfully delivered their bombs, the 2 F-18s safely returned to their carrier, the USS Saratoga. In another incident, the Hornet's ruggedness and ease of maintenance was demonstrated when a Hornet took hits to both engines, flew over 120 miles back to its base, and was repaired and flying within a few days. During the 1990s, Navy and Marine Hornets were used continuously during Operation Southern Watch in Iraq and over the skies of Bosnia and Kosovo. Additionally, Hornets flew sorties in 2001 during Operation Enduring Freedom and in 2003 during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Since its introduction into service, the F-18 has participated in every major conflict that the United States has been involved in. And given its forward deployment on carriers and land bases all over the world, the F-18 is likely to be the first responder in any U.S.-involved conflict today. And finally, in 1986, the Blue Angels transitioned to the F-18, which they continue to operate to this day. Performing in countless air shows for millions of spectators, the Blue Angels F-18s have inspired untold numbers of sailors and Marines to join the service. The F-18 has unquestionably made a huge impact on the armed forces of the world, both as a friendly and as an adversary. Even today, you'd be hard-pressed to find an airframe that can fulfill so many roles so well. That alone is an incredible achievement considering the F-18 was designed almost 50 years ago. While the F-18 has and is unquestionably a successful design, nothing lasts forever. The F-18 C and D models have slowly given way to the larger and more advanced E and F Super Hornets, and the Navy is planning to retire all C and D models by 2025. The Marines will continue to operate their C and D models into 2031, and ultimately all F-18s are slated to be replaced by the F-35. Just like the F-18 Hornet, the Super Hornet is a multi-role, twin-engine, supersonic carrier-capable fighter and attack aircraft. The Super Hornet's notable features include twin tails, folding wings, a tail section that has vertical stabilizers forward of the elevators, a unique extended wing design with leading-edge extensions or LEX, reinforced landing gear for carrier operations, and wingtip missile racks. However, unlike the Hornet, the Super Hornet has rectangular intake ramps, a larger sawtooth wing, and is about 20% larger than the original Hornet. With its larger wing, more powerful engines, and extended combat radius, Super Hornets are used as fleet defenders, air superiority fighters, long-range strike aircraft with precision-guided weapons, fighter escort, suppression of enemy air defenses, close air support, maritime strike, reconnaissance, forward air control, and even tankers. Essentially, the Super Hornet is capable of performing every mission type in the tactical spectrum, making it the embodiment of a multi-role fighter and attack aircraft. Before we dive deeper into the Super Hornet, make sure you check out part 1 of this series, which covers the origins of the Hornet. And as always, please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. One more thing, the official designation of the Super Hornet is the A-18E or F. So for purposes of brevity, I'll just say F-18 or Super Hornet most of the time. Alright, let's start by taking a look at the specifications of the Super Hornet. Just like the Hornet, the Super Hornet has an incredible array of weapons it can carry. While the Super Hornet retains the internal 20mm M61 Vulcan cannon, it also adds 2 additional hardpoints under the wings, bringing the total to 11. Some of the weapons options for these hardpoints are as follows. For air-to-air missions, the AIM-9 Sidewinder, AIM-9X, AIM-7 Sparrow, and AIM-120 AMRAAM. For anti-ship operations, the Harpoon and Slam ER. For air-to-ground missions, the Maverick, Joint Standoff Weapon, Pavoy Laser-Guided Bombs, and Traditional Bombs. For suppression of enemy air defenses or SEAD, the HARM Missile. And, in the case of the Growler, external jamming pods. This list is by no means exclusive, and should serve to demonstrate that if there is an airborne munition in the inventory, the Super Hornet can probably carry it. Just like the latest version of the F-16, the Super Hornet carries the AN APG-79 radar system, which is smaller and lighter than previous radars. Moreover, this system provides an enhanced view of the battlefield and allows for the detection, identification, and tracking of multiple targets at range. Additionally, the Super Hornet can carry data link pods, which allow for one aircraft to lock onto a target and another to fire on it. A variant of the Super Hornet, the Growler, specializes in electronic warfare and contains even more sensors and sensor pods. In fact, the internal 20mm cannon is removed to make room for advanced jamming equipment and sensors. Growlers provide escort jamming to confuse enemy defenses, as well as standoff jamming and deception roles. Since the Growler has 90% commonality with the Super Hornet, it can accompany other F-18s in all phases of the attack mission. Defensively, Super Hornets and Growlers also carry flares and chaff dispensers to help foil enemy missile locks. When the Navy ordered the original Hornet, it was intended to replace older strike aircraft and serve as a complement to the larger and longer-ranged F-14 Tomcat. And while the Hornet was good at performing many roles and much easier to maintain, its smaller size limited the Hornet's combat radius. Following the end of the Cold War, the Navy began plans to modernize or replace the F-14, which by then was starting to show its age. When the cost of upgrading the F-14 proved to be too expensive, the Navy began seeking a replacement. Initially, as part of the Naval Advanced Tactical Fighter or NATF program, a navalized F-22 was considered. And while the F-22 is an incredible aircraft, adapting it for carrier operations would have increased its weight by about 30%. Additionally, in order to adjust to demanding carrier operations, variable wings would have been needed to modify the F-22's flight profile. This doesn't even get into the potential loss of stealth characteristics or huge costs that would have been involved. For these reasons, the navalized F-22 concept was soon scrapped. At the same time the Navy was looking to replace the F-14, it was also looking to replace the A-6 Intruder, which was an old airframe by the 1990s. McDonnell Douglas had proposed the A-12 Avenger II, but the program was cancelled after cost overruns, delays, and doubt whether the program could even meet its stated objectives. This left the Navy searching for both a long-range fighter and attack platform. Enter McDonnell Douglas. As far back as the 1980s, an enlarged Hornet concept was being proposed, which was known then as Hornet 2000. Deciding it was safer to upgrade a relatively new design instead of creating something from scratch, the Navy proceeded to move forward. And while an enlargement of an existing airframe may seem like a minor modification, the upgraded Hornet essentially became a new aircraft. However, in order to gain budget approval, the Navy kept the A-18 designation to convince Congress that this program was a low-risk derivative of the Hornet. After much testing and trials, the Super Hornet was approved as a replacement for both the F-14 and A-6 in February of 2000, replacing two legendary aircraft and essentially condensing the fleet to an all-Hornet composition left the Super Hornet with very big shoes to fill. More on that later. When it was all said and done, the Navy considered the Super Hornet's acquisition a success, having met schedule and cost requirements. Today, the Super Hornet is produced by Boeing, with Northrop Grumman being the main subcontractor. Northrop Grumman produces the fuselage and vertical tail sections and assembles all associated subsystems at its facility in El Segundo, California. We've mentioned some similarities between the Hornet and Super Hornet, but how are they different? Here are a few. The most obvious feature are the rectangular air ramps of the Super Hornet versus the round ones found on the Hornet. Due to its larger sawtooth wings, the Super Hornet also has 2 extra hardpoints, raising the total to 11 from the Hornet's 9. And even though it is a larger aircraft, the Super Hornet has more than 40% fewer structural parts than the Hornet. The GE F414 engines have 35% more thrust than the original Hornet's F404 engines. The Super Hornet also has an enlarged leading edge extension, or LEX, which allowed to perform well at high angles of attack. The larger Super Hornet is also about 7,000 pounds heavier in the empty weight configuration and carries over 30% more internal fuel, which as a result increases its range by over 50% as compared to the original Hornet. Additionally, the Super Hornet can return to a carrier with more fuel and munitions still on board, an ability known as bringback. The Super Hornet's bringback capacity is over 9,000 pounds. Additionally, the Super Hornet was designed to be equipped with the buddy store or area refueling system to refuel other aircraft. Aside from the US Navy, Australia has ordered 24 Super Hornets and Kuwait has ordered 28. Canada, Switzerland, Malaysia, and Finland, all current operators of F-18 Hornets, have also expressed interest in purchasing Super Hornets to upgrade their air forces. And finally, as of the recording of this video, Germany is considering purchasing Super Hornets after having withdrawn from the F-35 program in January of 2019. These operators and potential operators make the Super Hornet a truly international platform. While the Super Hornet is a capable and advanced aircraft, the introduction of 5th generation aircraft and technologies have shown the need for upgrades. The latest version of the Super Hornet, the Block 3 or Advanced Super Hornet, addresses these concerns. Upgrades include General Electric's Enhanced Performance or EPE engine, which increases thrust output from 22,000 pounds to 26,400 pounds per engine, while reducing the overall fuel burn rate. A 50% reduction in frontal radar cross-section or RCS, as well as the ability to equip and enclose weapons pods to further reduce detection. This helps complement the stealthy F-35s on their missions. Conformal fuel tanks or CFTs are integrated into the fuselage, allowing an additional 3,500 pounds of fuel without significantly affecting drag, allowing the Super Hornet to fly farther and faster. An increased operational lifespan of at least 9,000 hours, up from 6,000 hours. This will extend the Super Hornet's life by years and possibly even decades. Improved sensor upgrades such as a 17 times more powerful upgraded computer system, improved data link sharing, and the addition of an enlarged touchscreen in the cockpit, which gives a pilot the ability to target and track multiple long-range targets. These sensor upgrades also allow the backseater in the F model Super Hornet to control up to 4 to 6 loyal wingman drones, which are Boeing's latest UAV. And while specs are still classified on the loyal wingmen, in theory a Super Hornet could sit back and send in UAVs to conduct strike or reconnaissance missions without endangering the human crew. The Super Hornet has been defending the Navy fleet and projecting power since its introduction into service in 2000, and with planned upgrades will continue to serve for decades to come. Having evolved from the Hornet, which itself evolved from the Cobra, the Super Hornet has earned a deserved reputation as one of the most storied and versatile aircraft. Over 50 years ago in 1965, the Northrop designers who began working on Project P530 as a rework of the F-5E could not have known the long trail the design would blaze in the skies. Recently, the US Navy accepted deliveries of the first two Block 3 Super Hornets. This latest version enhances the already legendary Super Hornet to be even more survivable and networked in the modern battlefield. So, what does the Super Hornet get in the new Block 3 version? We can divide the upgrades into three major areas: sensors, pilot interface, and structural. Let's take a look at these categories in more detail. Perhaps the biggest upgrades to the Block 3 spec are in this area. With an upgraded mission computer that is 17 times more powerful than the existing one, at the heart of the Block 3 Super Hornet is the new Distributed Targeting Processor Networked, or DTP-N, mission computer. This new mission computer has open architecture, can host AI software, and can process massive amounts of data. Feeding battlefield information into the DTP-N is the Tactical Targeting Network Technology, or TTNT, data link. The TTNT data link will allow for more communications among other Navy ships and aircraft, further enhancing the Super Hornet's battlefield awareness. Additionally, the Block 3 Super Hornet can mount a centerline tank-mounted IRST, or Infrared Search Track System. The IRST allows for passive detection of stealthy aircraft like the Chinese J-20 or the Russian Su-57. In fact, the IRST has been called a stealth equalizer with detection ranges well over 100 miles. All of the information gathered by the Super Hornet is less useful if the pilot cannot readily interpret it. To accomplish this, the Block 3 Super Hornet makes use of the ACS, or Advanced Cockpit System. ACS takes former multiple MFD displays and combines them into one 10 by 19 inch touchscreen display. The singular display brings an iPad-like user interface to the cockpit and is planned for use in both the single-seat E models and dual-seat F models. This will allow for customizable representations of critical data as it becomes available to the pilot. The Block 3 Super Hornet also incorporates some structural improvements to extend its range, make it harder to detect, and survive longer. Conformal fuel tanks, or CFTs, are used to add 3,500 pounds of fuel, which will not only help extend range but also increase loiter or patrol times over areas. The pilots who have flown the Block 3 Super Hornet report no noticeable differences in performance and state that they barely knew they were even there. Along with CFTs, upgrades include coatings of stealth-enhancing materials and structural enhancements that will reduce the radar cross-section, or RCS. A reduction in detectability should allow for the Super Hornet to better survive and thrive in the modern battlefield with ever-increasing peer-level threats. And lastly, structural changes have been incorporated to give the Block 3 Super Hornet an incredible planned service life of 10,000 hours. This will allow the Super Hornets to operate for decades to come, and is an incredible accomplishment considering that these aircraft are operated in punishing saltwater naval operations. The initial contract is for 78 new Block 3 Super Hornets and is planned to be completed by 2024. Additionally, all existing Block 2 Super Hornets will be upgraded to the Block 3 standard, giving the Navy a cutting-edge force. And while the new F-35Cs have begun entering Navy service, the Super Hornet is still the backbone of the fleet. With more than 600 examples of Super Hornets and Growlers, the Navy plans to keep them flying for years to come. Act 2. 2. Beyond the airframe. There's no disputing it. The Boeing A-18 Super Hornet is the Navy's all-encompassing multi-role tactical aircraft, a true workhorse that serves as a fighter, attack, reconnaissance, and even refueling tanker platform. What most people don't realize, however, is that the Super Hornet arguably makes use of the most extensive radar cross-section or RCS reduction measures of any contemporary fighter right after the low observable F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning, making it more stealthy than you might think. Again, I'm not saying the F-18 is as stealthy as an F-35 or F-22, but in certain configurations, the Super Hornet can go a long way in reducing its radar signature. For example, a clean reconnaissance loadout could be used to employ the Super Hornet as a forward screen to detect stealth fighters or other airborne threats at long ranges. More on that later. And while removing pylons and ordnance does help lower the RCS somewhat, the F-18 actually incorporates design elements to reduce its RCS dramatically, especially in the forward quarter. Let's dive in. At the most basic level, the Super Hornet makes considerable use of panel joint serration and edge alignment. Close inspection of the aircraft shows considerable attention is paid to the removal or filing of unnecessary surface join gaps and resonant cavities, even during routine carrier operations. Furthermore, the previous or legacy Hornet used grills to cover various accessory inlet and ducts, while the F-18 E and F Super Hornets use micro or centimetric band opaque perforated panels. Along with this, careful attention has been paid to the alignment of many panel boundaries and edges. This serves to scatter radar waves away from the aircraft's bore sight. Another effort that has been made to lower the RCS of the Super Hornet can be found in the air intakes. These have been optimized to reduce the RCS by use of S-shaped ducts, which lead to the engines. By using this curved piping to the turbines, the fan blades are hidden from view. Turbine fan blades represent one of the most prohibitive penalties to RCS, as they are nearly perpendicular to the direction of travel of the aircraft. Additionally, the edge alignment of the inlet leading edges are designed to scatter radiation to the sides, reducing the amount of radar emissions that are returned to the interrogating system. And in a similar way to the F-17 Nighthawk, the Super Hornet uses a fixed intake reflecting structure in the inlet tunnel, which keeps microwave illumination off the rotating fan blades. Many of these design features have been incorporated into the latest version of the Super Hornet, the Advanced Super Hornet, or better known as the Block 3 series. Block 3 also adds a way for the Super Hornet to carry external stores while still reducing its RCS. This is done by using enclosed weapon pods, or EWPs, where one EWP can carry 6 small diameter bombs, 2 medium-range AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles, or an equivalent loadout of up to 2,600 pounds per pod. With all of these RCS lowering features, Block 3 Super Hornets claim a 50% reduction in overall frontal RCS. There is also speculation that additional radar-absorbing materials or RAM coatings can be applied for certain mission profiles, but that is classified for obvious reasons. Along with these significant RCS reductions, the Block 3 Super Hornets take things a step further that make the Hornet's sting even more deadly: the ability to better detect and even track 5th generation stealth fighters. This is done in 3 major ways. First, according to Boeing, the new infrared search and track, or IRST pods on the Block 3 Hornets can detect gliders as well as F-117s, B-2s, F-22s, and F-35s even in their forward quarter at well over 100 miles. This centerline mounted sensor offers better visibility than other IRST platforms that are traditionally mounted in the nose, and has understandably been referred to as a stealth equalizer. Secondly is the newly installed Distributed Targeting Processor Networked, or DTP/N, computer, which exponentially increases the Super Hornet's processing power. Some estimates claim that the new computer has 17 times more processing power than previous Hornet examples, and is said to contain real-time machine learning algorithms, so that the mission computer can identify new threats or emissions and catalog them for use by other friendly aircraft and assets. This takes us to our third reason: the high-speed, high-bandwidth, high-throughput, and anti-jam Internet Protocol-based Tactical Targeting Network Technology, or TTNT, data link. This advanced data link brings 5th generation communications and sensor fusion capabilities to the Super Hornet. When these 3 assets are combined together, a pair of Block 3 Super Hornets can then detect, track, and lock enemy stealth aircraft well beyond the range of their onboard AN/APG-79 radars. The way this would work is as follows. A single Super Hornet using IRST could detect a stealth aircraft by seeing a hotspot at range, but it would just provide a line-of-sight bearing, not the exact range to the target. So the pilot would know the stealth aircraft is out there, but would not have a weapons quality track. However, if we bring in a second Block 3 Super Hornet that works with its flight lead, these two aircraft can create what is known as a fusion algorithm, essentially two lines of bearing from two different sources. The advanced computational power of the DTP/N can then compute a weapons quality track on the Bandit and fire a long-range air-to-air missile at it, all while remaining outside the stealth aircraft's detection zone. Remember that part of maintaining stealth is to keep radars in a passive mode, so it would be possible that the enemy stealth fighter would not be aware of the Super Hornets that are 100 miles out. Remember that APG-79 radar that the Super Hornet uses? It turns out that Raytheon, the radar's manufacturer, has developed a new gallium nitride or GaN-based version of the APG-79. Known as the APG-79 V4, gallium nitride-based radars run much cooler, which in turn allow for more electrical power to be run through the radar. More power equates to longer range and better tracking, so it is possible that the new V4 radars, along with the aforementioned Block 3 upgrades, will give the Super Hornet an even greater striking power and detection range. By using a combination of the extended range of the GaN-based radar and the IRST sensors, stealth aircraft like the Chinese J-20 or Russian Su-57 could be detected and tracked at much farther ranges than previously thought possible. And lastly, structural changes have been incorporated to give the Block 3 Super Hornet an incredible planned service life of 10,000 hours. Remember that the Navy uses Super Hornets in virtually every tactical and even some support roles, so those airframes get a lot of wear and tear on them in punishing carrier operations at sea. These new structural changes will allow the Super Hornets to operate for decades to come, keeping the tip of the spear sharp until the FA-XX or Next Generation Air Dominance or NGAD fighter becomes operational. Recently, the Navy concluded initial flight tests with the Lightning Advanced Targeting Pods on FA-18 Super Hornets, signaling the Navy's move to replace their legacy targeting pods with these new ones from Northrop Grumman. During testing, pilots performed maneuvers and sorties that are representative of combat missions, which included tracking ground and air targets along with target designation. These tests convincingly demonstrated the Lightning's ability to incorporate modern and upgradable mission capabilities to the Super Hornet, especially the Block 3 variant. More on that later. By making use of autonomous target tracking along with laser sensors, these new pods provide naval aviators with enhanced capabilities for both land and sea operations. More than just a targeting pod, the Lightning can also provide intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, or ISR, along with humanitarian assistance in crisis situations. To do this, the pods feature a variety of daylight and infrared sensors with high-definition digital video that is presented with advanced picture-in-picture capabilities. This allows multiple simultaneous views to be shown, providing real-time targeting and reconnaissance data to air crews. When seconds count, details matter, and the Lightning provides the fleet a clear, detailed view of the situation. Additionally, the pod makes use of the groundbreaking Plug-and-Play 3 data link architecture. This allows the Lightning pod to include advanced data recordings for ISR missions, and through increased onboard computing power, the ability to host user-defined networking applications. These data links also support secure two-way communications. All of these additional enhancements, along with real-time data delivery, effectively give 4th-generation platforms like the Super Hornet 5th-generation-like sensor fusion. And since practice makes perfect, the Lightning pods feature an eye-safe laser mode, which allows for training under realistic conditions while providing safe operations for crews and allied forces. When it comes to reliability and effectiveness, the numbers speak for themselves. To date, over 900 pods have been delivered, and over 3 million flight hours have been logged. This figure includes over 1 million hours in combat, so the Lightning has been battle-tested under the most demanding conditions. Incredibly, the pods have a 97% availability rate, a testament to the pod's modular design and the dedication of the maintainers and field service engineers. As mentioned earlier, the new advanced Lightning pods were recently tested on FA-18 Super Hornets, a capable and proven airframe for the Navy. The Super Hornet itself is undergoing a series of upgrades and modernizations, which are collectively known as Block 3. Sensor upgrades form a critical component for the Block 3 standard, starting with the upgraded mission computer that is 17 times more powerful than the existing one. Known as the Distributed Testing Processor Network, or DTPN, this new processing power and digital architecture allows for the processing of massive amounts of data and can take full advantage of the enhanced features found on the Lightning pods. Feeding battlefield information to the DP-N computer is the Tactical Targeting Network Technology, or TTNT data link. The TTNT data link will allow for more communications among other Navy ships and aircraft, further enhancing the Super Hornet's battlefield awareness. To process and display all this information to flight crews, the Block 3 Super Hornet makes use of ACS, or Advanced Cockpit System. ACS takes form or multiple MFDs and combines them into one large touchscreen display. This singular display brings an iPad-like user experience to the cockpit and is planned for use in both the single-seat E models and dual-seat F models. This will allow for customizable representations of critical data as it becomes available. Furthermore, the Block 3 Super Hornet also incorporates some structural improvements to extend its range, making it harder to detect and survive longer. This is done in several ways. Conformal fuel tanks, or CFTs, are used to add 3,500 pounds of fuel, which will not only help extend range, but also increase loiter or patrol times over areas. The pilots who've flown the Block 3 Super Hornet report no noticeable difference in performance and state that they barely even knew the CFTs were there. Along with CFTs, upgrades include coatings of stealth-enhancing materials and structural enhancements that will reduce the radar cross-section, or RCS. A reduction in detectability should allow for the Super Hornet to better survive and thrive in the modern battlefield with ever-increasing peer-level threats. And lastly, structural changes have been incorporated to give the Block 3 Super Hornet an incredible planned service life of 10,000 hours. This will allow Super Hornets to operate for decades to come, and is an incredible accomplishment considering that these aircraft are operated in punishing saltwater naval operations. What about the Growler? When it comes to carrier operations, one often overlooked component is escort or support jamming aircraft. Sharing some 90% commonality with a combat-proven Super Hornet is the Boeing A-18G Growler. The Growler is the most advanced airborne electronic attack, or AEA, aircraft, and the only one in production today, providing tactical jamming and electronic protection to U.S. military forces and allies around the world. The Growler systems are continuously being upgraded to ensure continued protection to the fleet and strike aircraft during high-threat missions. And just like the Hornet is receiving modernization upgrades, the Growler is also not standing still. Currently under development are the next-generation jamming pods, or NGJs, a system of 3 integrated pods that provide full-spectrum jamming capabilities. More specifically, these updated pods will cover the low, mid, and high bands of signal frequencies. While most threats fall into the mid-band range, the addition of the next-generation jammer low band, or NGJ-LB, pod in particular is seen as a critical upgrade to the Growler's capability set. This is significant as the currently in use AN/ALQ-99's low-band performance has historically suffered from reliability issues. The next-generation pods appear to be based on Actively Electronically Scanned Array, or AESA technology, which along with being more reliable allow for more precise jamming efforts at further distances. This in turn will allow Allied units to engage enemy threats from increased standoff distances, which should improve strike aircraft survivability rates. Additionally, these upgraded pods will allow for an increased number of jamming assignments per aircraft and enhance flexibility of strike operations. This will allow Growlers to complement F-35s, since the new low-band pod is ideally suited to jamming long-range, lower-frequency radars, which are increasingly being used to detect stealthy aircraft. By jamming or disrupting these long-range radars, the Growlers can provide enhanced support for F-35s and F-22s. In a typical scenario, F-35s and F-22s would use their onboard AESA radars to perform penetrating escort jamming, or jamming within range of ground defenses as they proceed to the target. The Growler would perform modified escort jamming at a distance outside the engagement zone of ground defenses while covering a large area for the strike group. In this way, the Growler would blind long-range radar as the Raptors and Lightnings approached, while the F-35's Tactical Electronic Warfare Suite would deal with high-frequency radars en route to the target. Naturally, the Growlers could also provide similar protection to their Super Hornet cousins as well. And finally, Growlers can also work together with specialized jammer drones, which can distribute their electronic warfare or EW systems over a much larger area. In this way, a single Growler could act as an EW node, reducing the number of air crews placed at risk that would normally be needed to cover greater engagement zones. There is even some speculation that Growlers equipped with these next-generation pods could initiate cyber attacks on air defense systems, causing them to shut down completely prior to a strike. Using these advanced pods could also allow Growlers to direct high-powered bursts of microwave energy to destroy enemy emitters. And lastly, Growlers could also be used to spoof the radar signature of another aircraft onto a drone. This would cause defensive systems to engage and expend valuable missiles on a relatively inexpensive and unmanned attritable drone. Given all of these developments, are pods the path to extending the service life of Super Hornets and Growlers? The Advanced Lightning Pod along with the next generation jamming pods certainly make a strong case. These pods, along with the Super Hornet Block 3 upgrades, should continue to provide the Navy with a cutting-edge force. And while the new 5th generation F-35Cs have begun entering Navy service, the F-18 platform still forms the backbone of the fleet. With more than 600 examples of Super Hornets and Growlers, the Navy plans to keep them flying for years to come. The F-18 HARV, or High Alpha Research Vehicle, was a NASA testbed used to study performance at high angles of attack, or alpha. The aircraft flew from 1989 to 1996 in a 3-phased research program that progressively added modifications to the Hornet. Let's take a look at the specifications for the F-18 HARV. Length, 56 feet or 17.1 meters. Height, 10 feet 6 inches or 3.2 meters at the canopy. Wingspan, 37 feet 5 inches or 11.4 meters. Maximum speed, initially Mach 1.8, however with later modifications, subsonic. Phase 1 weight, 31,980 pounds or 14,506 kilograms. Phase 2 and 3 weight, 36,099 pounds or 14,506 kilograms. Engines. Each General Electric F404 GE 400 turbofan engine produced 16,000 pounds of thrust or 71.7 kilonewtons with afterburner. The aircraft that would become the F-18 HARV was actually a pre-production FA-18 and the 6th one ever built. Having been assigned Bureau number 160780, this particular F-18 was chosen as a testbed because it had a spin chute installed, as the Navy had used it to evaluate spin performance and recovery. Under NASA's use, the aircraft was designated number 840. The HARV program was a joint effort between NASA's Dryden, Ames, Langley, and Lewis research centers. By the time NASA received the aircraft, it had been cannibalized for spare parts so extensively by the Navy that it was assumed the aircraft would never fly again. In fact, the engineers cataloged 400 missing parts and virtually no documentation of the existing wiring system. To get 840 airworthy, the mechanics and technicians had to cut out the existing wiring, find substitute parts, assemble and rewire the entire aircraft. By the time they were done, the words "silk purse" were painted on the fuselage, a take on the expression, "you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear." So why was there such a need to take a fighter that had been cannibalized and spend so much effort into making it airworthy? To understand the need for the HARV project, we need to look at angle of attack and why it is so important to fighter planes. Fixed-wing aircraft have what is known as a chord line, which is a reference line that is drawn through the wing. As an aircraft flies through the air, it will pitch up and down, and a vector is generated between the relative motion of the aircraft and the atmosphere. This forms an angle which is referred to as angle of attack and is usually represented by the letter alpha. Every aircraft will stall when it reaches its critical alpha, which in most airfoils is somewhere between 15 and 20 degrees, and slightly higher on fighter aircraft. During combat maneuvers, fighter pilots often place their airplanes at high alpha as they maneuver to get a shot, and this can lead to a stall, which is a very bad situation in a dogfight, since at best there is a momentary loss of control. Therefore, understanding how aerodynamic forces behave at high alpha and designing new airframes that can perform better in these regimes provides fighters with a definitive edge in close combat. NASA has always been interested in high alpha research, and what would lead to the HARV demonstrator actually had its origins in the High Angle of Attack Technology Program, or HATP. HATP was a joint effort between NASA's Langley Research Center in Virginia, the Ames Research Center at Moffett Field, California, the Glenn Research Center in Ohio, and the Dryden Research Center. The program involved extensive wind tunnel testing, the use of computer models to predict aerodynamic behavior, which is known as computational fluid dynamics or CFD, and development of advanced flight control software algorithms. The program included participation from the Navy, Air Force, Marines, and members of industry and academia. In fact, between 1990 and 1996, NASA hosted a biannual conference which focused on high alpha research and technology. And while HATP was successful in obtaining some data from subscale models in wind tunnels, it was soon determined that a full-scale flight research platform was also needed. The aircraft that would be selected needed to have existing high alpha performance. Because of this, the F-18 was the natural choice, as even in its production form, the Hornet has no angle of attack restrictions in its normal center of gravity position. The stage was set to begin the High Alpha Research Vehicle program. Once the Silk Purse or F-18 HARV was ready for tests, Phase 1 began in 1987 and would run through 1989, consisting of 101 research flights. During Phase 1, there were no external modifications to the aircraft, as baseline data was needed. In order to capture this data, extensive instrumentation was added, including research-specific cockpit instrumentation and air pressure sensors which were located in a 360-degree pattern along the aircraft. These sensors allowed for detailed analysis of vortices that formed off the forebody and leading edge extensions, or LEX. In order to visualize airflow patterns, small ports were fitted near the nose which would release tracer smoke. Along with the tracer smoke, small amounts of antifreeze with dye was released from additional ports which would travel across the aircraft's skin and illustrate airflow patterns. Additionally, small pieces of yarn were taped throughout the aircraft, which illustrated flow patterns for changing conditions. And if the idea of taping yarn to an aircraft sounds strange, talk to a glider pilot sometime. Getting back to the research, the purpose of Phase 1 was to develop flight techniques to fly and sustain high alpha maneuvers for as long as possible, as well as gain experience with the aerodynamic measurements while operating in these flight regimes. Phase 2, which totaled 193 flights, began in 1993 and would introduce major software and hardware modifications to the HARV. Most notably was the installation of a multi-axis thrust vectoring control system, which used paddle-like vanes mounted around the engine's exhaust and were actually made up of heat-resistant nickel alloy containing chromium and iron. In order to accommodate the vanes, the divergent portion of the exhaust nozzles was removed. This did not affect subsonic performance, but did make supersonic flight no longer possible. There was also a weight penalty introduced. Between the thrust vectoring control system, a spin parachute, ballast, and emergency power system, an additional 3,700 pounds or 1,678 kilograms was added. Despite these penalties, the maneuvers that were now possible allowed the HARV to perform then unheard of flight routines. In order to provide better control at these extreme conditions, a PACE 1750 computer was used. The computer was programmed with custom-written flight control laws which determined the optimum combination of control surface movement along with vectored thrust to facilitate pilot demand. This meant that once the system was engaged, the pilot used standard cockpit controls and no additional action was required by the pilot. An interesting note is that the original F-18 flight control system was used as a backup and also during takeoff and landing. With these enhancements, the HARV was able to conduct stable flight at 70 degrees alpha, where the previous maximum had only been 55 degrees. Additionally, high roll rates were achieved at 65 degrees alpha, where the previous had been 35 degrees without vectoring. From 1993 to early 1994, a sophisticated pressure measurement system was installed along the engine inlets and even on the engine faces. These instruments provided an unprecedented understanding of how extreme maneuver conditions affect engine airflow. Phase 3 totaled 109 flights and ran from 1995 to 1996. The HARV was modified further, this time with movable strakes mounted on each side of the nose. At high alpha, conventional rudders become ineffective and yaw control diminishes. These strakes were 4 feet long and 6 inches wide, and would fold flush against the aircraft's skin during low alpha flight. At higher levels of alpha, the strakes would extend and produce large side forces for yaw control. During wind tunnel testing, it was found that the strakes could be as effective at high alpha as the rudders were at low alpha. Between the installation of the strakes and thrust vectoring, the HARV could operate in 3 separate flight modes. The first used thrust vectoring alone. The second used thrust vectoring for pitch control and a combination of thrust vectoring with the strakes for lateral or side-to-side control. The third mode used thrust vectoring solely for pitch control and the strakes solely for longitudinal control. These 3 modes were a unique feature of the HARV project and provided a great deal of research data for control power requirements at high values of alpha. And finally, it was found that the nose strakes provided effective control above 35 degrees of alpha. The HARV was a unique aircraft that provided the art and science that is aerodynamics, immense amounts of knowledge and understanding, and was flown by a wide range of organizations, including the US Navy, Marine Corps, the Royal Canadian Air Force, the UK's Royal Air Force, McDonnell Douglas, Calspan, and of course NASA Dryden. The HARV flew during a time that some now consider a golden age at Dryden. Aircraft such as the X-31 and the F-15 Active were contemporaries of the HARV and represented a truly magical time in the skies above Edwards. If you haven't already, you can watch the videos on those 2 wonderful airplanes. I will leave a link in the description below. Lessons learned from these programs led to revolutionary technological leaps in aircraft design, tools, and modeling methods. It cannot be understated how pioneering these efforts were. What we now see at air shows was considered very dangerous flight regimes prior to these programs. Both the F-22 and F-35 directly benefited from this research. The HARV and its contemporaries have blazed the trail that will likely have the fighters it inspired flying into 2070. And if you're wondering where the HARV is today, well, it is on display at the Virginia Air and Space Center in Hampton, Virginia. Act 3. The Global Test. Could the Super Hornet still compete? Realizing that the legacy FA-18 Hornets, the Finnish Air Force, or FAF, had been operating since 1995, were becoming outdated and nearing the end of their service life, the Ministry of Defense in 2015 initiated a replacement program known as the HX Challenge. The goal of the HX Challenge is an ambitious one: procure new multi-role fighters while maintaining the FAF's current numerical strength of 64, and do this with an allocated price cap of 10 billion euros. These new fighters must be able to endure low temperatures along with harsh weather conditions common to Finland, while still performing a diverse range of missions including air superiority, air-to-ground, anti-ship, reconnaissance, and the ability to conduct deep strikes to deter potential foreign attacks. Upon choosing a new fighter, the Legacy Hornets will be phased out between 2025 and 2030, with the new fighter being expected to serve into the 2060s. Geographically a neighbor of Russia and Sweden, Finland is officially neutral but has been increasingly working closely with NATO, most recently participating in the 2018 Trident Juncture exercise. Trident Juncture was a huge combined arms exercise featuring air, sea, and land assets, which simulated a NATO defense of Norway from an amphibious invasion. During Trident Juncture, NATO aircraft operated out of Finnish air bases, and FAF Hornets flew sorties as well. This, as one can imagine, did not exactly sit well with the Russians, and as a result the HX competition only includes NATO fighters, despite Finland's previous use of Russian-made aircraft such as the MiG-21. The 5 participants in the HX Challenge are Boeing's FA-18 Super Hornet, Saab's JAS-39 Gripen, Dassault's Rafale, the Eurofighter Typhoon, and Lockheed's F-35 Lightning II. In 2016, the 5 identified participants were sent a questionnaire to see how they could meet the needs of the HX Challenge. The questionnaire included topics which can be broken down into 5 categories. Military capability, which includes performance and weapons options. Security of supply, meaning the ability to have parts on hand to maintain airworthiness in times of crisis or war. Domestic industrial contributions, closely related to security of supply. The more local Finnish industries can produce or source, the easier to maintain the new fighter. Cost to purchase and maintain. Cost is always an important factor, especially given the €10 billion cap set for the program. Security and defensive policy impacts. Choosing the new fighter could have political ramifications, as well as the need to update existing tactics and strategies. Today, we will take a closer look at each of the participants and how well they align with Finland's need. One quick note, cost will no doubt play a role in the final decision, but it was very difficult to find reliable cost figures to form a comparative analysis, and as a result, I will mention costs when possible. Let's begin with the Block 3 Super Hornet. The Super Hornet is a multi-role twin-engine supersonic carrier-capable fighter and attack aircraft. Notable features include twin tails, folding wings, a tail section that has vertical stabilizers forward of the elevators, a unique extended wing design, which are known as leading-edge extensions or LEX, reinforced landing gear for carry operations, and wingtip missile rack. Super Hornets are used as fleet defenders, air superiority fighters, long-range strike aircraft with precision-guided weapons, fighter escort, suppression of enemy air defenses, close air support, maritime strike, reconnaissance, forward air control, and even tankers. Essentially, the Super Hornet is capable of performing every mission type in the tactical spectrum, making it the embodiment of a multi-role fighter. Additionally, as part of the HX Challenge, Boeing has offered to include the electronic warfare version of the Super Hornet, the A-18G Growler. The Super Hornet has an incredible array of weapons it can carry, starting with the internal 20mm M61 Vulcan cannon, along with 11 total hardpoints. Some of the weapon options for the Super Hornet include, for air-to-air missions, the AIM-9 Sidewinder and the AIM-120 AMRAAM. For anti-ship operations, the Harpoon and Slam ER. For air-to-ground missions, the AGM-65 Maverick, joint standoff weapons, Paveway laser-guided bombs, and traditional freefall bombs. For the suppression of enemy air defenses, or SEAD, the HARM missile. And in the case of the Growler, external jamming pods. This list is by no means exclusive and should serve to demonstrate that if there is an airborne munition in the inventory, the Super Hornet can carry it. Boeing is offering Finland the latest version of the Super Hornet, the Block 3. Upgrades unique to the Block 3 include an upgraded mission computer that is 17 times more powerful than the existing one, which is known as the Distributed Targeting Processor Networked or DTPN mission computer. Feeding battlefield information into the DPTN is the Tactical Targeting Network Technology or TTNT data link. The TTNT data link will allow for more communications among other allied ships and aircraft, further enhancing the Super Hornet's battlefield awareness. Additionally, the Block 3 Super Hornet can mount a centerline tank-mounted IRST or infrared search track system. The IRST allows for passive detection of stealthy aircraft like the Chinese J-20 and Russian Su-57. In fact, the IRST has been called a stealth equalizer with detection ranges well over 100 miles. Furthermore, the Block 3 Super Hornet also incorporates structural improvements to extend its range, which make it harder to detect and survive longer. Conformal fuel tanks or CFTs are used to add 3,500 pounds of fuel, which not only help extend range but also increase loiter or patrol times over areas. Along with CFTs, upgrades include coatings of stealth-enhancing materials and structural enhancements that will reduce the radar cross-section or RCS. A reduction in detectability should allow for the Super Hornet to better survive and thrive in the modern battlefield with ever-increasing peer-level threats. And lastly, Structural changes have been incorporated to give the Block 3 Super Hornet an incredible planned service life of 10,000 hours. This will allow Super Hornets to operate for decades to come. Advantages. The Block 3 Super Hornet appears to be a good fit for the FAF. Aside from the fact that a transition from the Legacy Hornet to the Super Hornet would likely be the easiest of all the entrants in the competition, Finland's existing relationship with Boeing and the Legacy Hornet should also take advantage of existing supply chains. Boeing estimates that 60% of Finland's existing Legacy Hornet maintenance and tooling can be used to support the Super Hornet, increasing the program's overall cost savings. And lastly, the addition of Growlers would add a key tactical electronics warfare component to the FAF. Next, let's take a look at the Saab JAS-39 Gripen. The Saab JAS-39 Gripen is a Mach 2 single-engine light multi-role fighter which implements fly-by-wire controls and makes use of a relaxed stability design for improved maneuverability. Notable features include a delta wing with forward canards, a single engine, and side air intakes. Manufactured by Saab, a Swedish aerospace company, the Gripen was designed to replace the Draken and Viggen, both successful previous Saab designs. The Gripen is designed to be easy to maintain and have quick turnaround time between missions. Similar to the Boeing offer, Saab is offering to include its GlobalEye Airborne Early Warning and Control or AEW&C platform in the deal. The Gripen makes use of an internally equipped Mauser BK-27, a 27mm revolver cannon capable of firing 1,700 rounds per minute. Additionally, the Gripen has 10 hardpoints and can carry about 6,500 kilograms of ordnance and equipment. The Gripen carries a wide range of air-to-air and air-to-ground weapons, some notable examples which include the MBDA Meteor missile and the RBS-15 standoff cruise missile. When it comes to sensors, the Gripen makes use of advanced avionics which are completely integrated. This provides sensor fusion and allows the Gripen's avionics to be constantly enhanced via software updates. Furthermore, the Gripen is continuously digitally recording flight telemetry and cockpit activity. This data can be downloaded post-mission or replayed in the cockpit, and mission data can be preloaded as well. The Gripen sensor platform was designed to be networked as part of the International Defense System, meaning that real-time data can be exchanged between the aircraft and ground facilities. This has led to Saab's claim that the Gripen fields the world's most highly developed data link. In fact, the Gripen can use a number of different communication standards and systems, such as Link 16, Saturn Secure Radio, Rover, and satellite uplinks. When it comes to radar, the Gripen E models make use of the Raven ES-05 Actively Electronically Scanned Array or AESA radar, which increases the scan view and range while reducing the time to change scan direction. Additionally, the Gripen houses the Skyward G Infrared Search and Track or IRST sensor, a passive tracking system which detects thermal emissions from ground or air targets. Passive infrared systems cannot be jammed by conventional electronic countermeasures. To further boost the Gripen sensor suite, targeting and reconnaissance pods can be fitted to the Gripen, which provide even more precise delivery of munitions and can relay reconnaissance data to other elements. And finally, it should be noted that the Gripen is configured to meet NATO operability standards. Advantages for the Gripen. The Gripen offers some attractive options for the FAF. The Gripen was designed to operate out of unimproved airfields or even highways, a strong consideration for Finland since theoretically their airfields are exposed to attack by neighboring states. The Gripen should also have the lowest per unit costs of all the entrants in the competition. Additionally, Saab has offered to transfer aircraft production, maintenance, repair, and overhaul facilities locally to Finland by use of a Gripen and GlobalEye development center that would be built in-country. And finally, although the GlobalEye system is not mounted on a tactical fighter like the Growler, according to Saab, the GlobalEye is the world's most advanced AEW&C platform. Next, let's take a look at the Dassault Rafale. The Dassault Rafale is a French-designed and produced multi-role fighter intended to perform aerial reconnaissance, air supremacy, interdiction, ground support, strike missions, anti-ship, and even nuclear deterrence missions. Because of this vast range of missions, the Rafale is often referred to as an omni-role fighter. Notable features include a delta wing, canards, twin engines, a single vertical stabilizer, and a permanently extended refueling probe. The word Rafale translates to gust of wind or burst of fire in a more military sense. The Rafale is armed with an internal GIOT-30 30mm revolver cannon. Designed to be both effective in air-to-air as well as air-to-ground rolls, the GIOT-30 can fire up to 2,500 rounds per minute. Additionally, the Rafale has an impressive 14 hardpoints, which can carry up to 9,500 kilograms of various ordnance, allowing the Rafale to perform as a true omni-role fighter. Some notable weapon examples include the Meteor missile, the MBDA Apache anti-runway cruise missile, the MBDA low observable Storm Shadow cruise missile, or Scalp EG as it is known in France. For anti-ship operations, the Sea Skimming Exocet missile can be used. And finally, for nuclear deterrence, the ASMPA nuclear cruise missile can be equipped. The ASMPA can have a yield of up to 300 kilotons. To be an omni-role fighter, the Rafale needs to have the best sensor suite available. Today, the Rafale uses the RBE-2 AA radar, which is another actively electronically scanned array or AESA system. Additionally, the Rafale makes use of a long-range optoelectronic system known as Front Spectra Optronics or FSO. The FSO is a passive sensor system which enables firing of infrared or heat-seeking missiles at beyond visual range distances. Since FSO is optically based, it is immune to electronic jamming and can be used to provide long-range covert surveillance. Furthermore, the FSO provides laser range finding capabilities for ground, air, and sea targets. To provide situational awareness and electronic warfare capabilities, the Rafale utilizes the Spectra system. Spectra integrates fully with other aircraft systems and provides multi-layer threat warning capabilities against hostile missiles, lasers, and radars. Long-range detection, localization, and identification of threats are carried out by Spectra, which allows the pilot to select the best countermeasures to deal with the identified threats. The Rafale also makes use of advanced data links and data fusion, which effectively provides the Rafale a complete view of the integrated battle space. And finally, the Rafale's surface area is 70% composite materials, and while not fully a stealth aircraft, the use of composites and S-duct intakes to conceal engine fan blades, the Rafale has a reduced radar cross-section, to the point that many of the features which reduce the radar signature are still classified. Advantages for the Rafale. If the Rafale is chosen, Dassault has offered Finland to independently support its own Rafale fleet, going as far as to allow assembly of the fighters in Finland. There is also the consideration that since Dassault is a French company, the supply chains could be kept European-centered. Next, we will take a look at the Eurofighter Typhoon. The Eurofighter Typhoon is a highly capable 4th+ generation multi-role fighter with exceptional performance, advanced avionics, and superior maneuverability. The product of lessons learned from the Cold War, the Typhoon is a result of an extended collaboration between Germany, Spain, Italy, and the UK. Notable features include canards, a delta wing, dual engines with a split air intake under the belly, and an extensive amount of hardpoints for mounting weapons. The Eurofighter Typhoon is equipped with an internal 27mm Mauser BK-27 revolver cannon. Typical loadouts include 150 rounds. Additionally, the Eurofighter has an impressive 13 hardpoints for mounting various air-to-air and air-to-ground weapons. This abundant amount of hardpoints gives the Eurofighter unprecedented loadout options, including the ability to carry 6 bombs, 6 missiles, and a targeting pod in the same sortie. Few, if any other aircraft can match that kind of loadout flexibility on a single mission. The Eurofighter boasts some of the most advanced sensor platforms currently in service. In addition to the standard hands-on throttle and stick or HOTAS interface, the Eurofighter also incorporates voice commands. All of these systems integrate seamlessly to provide the pilot with a 360-degree view of the battlefield. Additionally, the Eurofighter sensor suite allows for full data linking capabilities, pulling in data from other assets including sea, air, and land. The Eurofighter also makes use of the Praetorian DASS or Defensive Aid Subsystem, which provides threat assessments as well as both electronic and physical countermeasures. This system includes laser warners, flare launchers, chaff dispensers, and missile warners, wingtip ECM pods, and even a towed decoy. It is important to note that the Praetorian DASS system is fully integrated into the Eurofighter, meaning there's no need to carry additional external pods. To reduce the pilot's workload, the DASS system is fully automatic, including the flare chaff dispensers, which will deploy in an intelligent pre-programmed pattern. The system can also be manually overridden by the pilot. providing air-to-air passive target detection and tracking, and also providing air-to-ground target identification and acquisition, is the Passive Infrared Airborne Track Equipment or PIRATE system. The PIRATE system is easily distinguishable as a protrusion on the left side of the nose. Advantages for the Eurofighter. Like the Rafale and Gripen, the Eurofighter is produced in Europe, potentially making adopting supply chains easier than an overseas option. BAE Systems calls the Eurofighter the most advanced multi-role fighter on the market. Next, let's take a look at the F-35 Lightning. The Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II is a 5th generation, single-engine, single-seat, multi-role stealth fighter, which is tasked with performing a variety of missions including strike, air superiority, surveillance, reconnaissance, and electronic warfare. Having been called the most lethal, survivable, and connected fighter aircraft in the world, the F-35 is intended to operate until 2070. Lockheed Martin is the primary contractor, along with principal partners BAE Systems and Northrop Grumman. The F-35 is an international fighter, with partner nations that include Norway, Australia, Denmark, Canada, and the Netherlands. The F-35 is actually a family of aircraft that is produced in 3 main variants: the CTOL or Conventional Takeoff and Landing F-35A, the STOVL or Short Takeoff and Vertical Landing F-35B, and the CV Katobar or Catapult Assisted Takeoff but Arrested Recovery F-35C. If selected by Finland, the F-35A variant will be used. The F-35A is armed with an internal GAU-22A 25mm 4-barrel rotary cannon with 180 rounds of onboard ammunition. Additionally, the F-35 has 4 internal stations in 2 weapons bays which are used to maintain its stealth profile, and up to 6 external hardpoints, 3 under each wing, that can be used for non-stealth missions. The internal stations can carry up to 2,600 kilograms, while the external stations can hold up to 6,800 kilograms. Total weapons payload capacity is 8,200 kilograms. Like the other aircraft on this list, the F-35 can carry a diverse range of weapons. Some notable examples include the air-to-air AIM-132 ASRAAM missile, eventually the MBDA Meteor missile, and the B-61 thermonuclear gravity bomb. When it comes to sensors, the F-35 is equipped with the AN/APG-81, an actively electronically scanned array or AESA radar. An evolution of the F-22's AN/APG-77 radar, the 81 version includes air-to-air modes found in the F-22 along with advanced air-to-ground modes that utilize high-resolution mapping, the ability to track multiple ground-moving targets, and electronic warfare capabilities. Additionally, air-to-air and air-to-ground modes can be run simultaneously in the F-35's large cockpit display. These abilities offer first look, first shot, and first kill capability to the F-35. It is not difficult to see why the APG-81 has been called the world's most advanced fire control radar found on a fighter. The F-35 also makes use of the only 360-degree spherical situational awareness system, known as Distributed Aperture System or DAS. It consists of 6 infrared cameras mounted around the aircraft, which send HD real-time imagery directly to the pilot's helmet. This allows the pilot to fully see the environment around them in day or night conditions with no loss of clarity or quality. Among other features, DAS provides detection and tracking of missiles, fire control, tracking of friendly aircraft, and navigation assistance for both day and night modes. Furthermore, DAS integrates with other aircraft sensors, meaning that if the radar detects objects of interest, the DAS algorithms analyze them and recommends in which order to deal with the threats, essentially providing real-time data fusion. Additionally, the F-35 can make use of the world's first and only sensor platform which provides both forward-looking infrared or FLIR and infrared search and track or IRST functionality, which is known as an Electro-Optical Targeting System or EOTS. While other aircraft make use of EOTS systems, the F-35 is integrated into one combined unit. This lightweight system further enhances the pilot's situational awareness and is located in a stealthy low-drag housing with a sapphire window. The EOTS integrates via a high-speed fiber optic interface to the aircraft's integrated central computer. Unlike other fighters, the F-35 does not have a heads-up display or HUD. Instead, the F-35's pilots make use of a helmet-mounted display system or HMDS to view flight and combat data at all times. The HMDS also receives image data from the DAS and allows pilots to effectively see through the aircraft. Additionally, the helmet allows for high angles of boresight target locking, meaning the pilot can lock on a target and fire a missile at another aircraft that is not oriented towards the F-35's nose. All of these systems integrate to provide sensor fusion, which creates an integrated view of the battlefield. This provides unprecedented situational awareness and can be distributed to other assets via secure data links, making the F-35 a force multiplier on the modern battlefield. Along with its advanced sensors, stealth is another key feature of the F-35. The airframe was designed and shaped to reduce the radar cross-section, or RCS. Additionally, the F-35 makes use of radar absorbent materials, or RAM. The F-35 applied lessons learned from previous stealth applications such as the F-22, and as a result, the F-35 skin is more durable and requires less maintenance than older topcoats. At certain angles and frequencies, the F-35's RCS is lower than a metal golf ball and compares favorably to the F-22. Additionally, the F-35's radio frequency emitters also employ rigorous controls to minimize or prevent their detection. F-35 advantages. The F-35 is the only 5th generation all-stealth aircraft in the HX competition. A truly international fighter, were Finland to adopt the F-35, it would join a growing number of European nations that have already done so, making parts and interoperability with allies a strong consideration. One could make the argument that the F-35 is the most future-proofed of the 5 options. We've looked at the 5 entrants into the HX Challenge. Finland has said that the aircraft they choose should have a 10-to-1 kill ratio, and that the final decision will be made in 2021. Interestingly, Finland has historically operated aircraft from all countries involved in the HX Challenge. Before Hornets, Finland has operated Swedish Drakens, a variety of English fighters mainly during and before the 1950s, several German fighter planes before and during World War II, as well as some French and Italian aircraft. Today, Finland is operating a Spanish transport, so indeed, all countries in the past have delivered some aircraft to Finland. In order to replace its aging CF-188s or Legacy Hornets, Canada has put forth a request to acquire 88 new fighter aircraft by 2022, with a projected cost of $19 billion, along with a strong consideration for some of the aircraft to be built locally in Canada. In response, 3 manufacturers have offered their fighter as a suitable replacement: the Boeing A-18 Super Hornet, the Saab Gripen, and the Lockheed Martin F-35. Today, we will take an in-depth look at each fighter and then look at the specific needs for the Royal Canadian Air Force. Let's start with the Super Hornet. The Super Hornet is a multi-role twin-engine supersonic carrier-capable fighter and attack aircraft. Notable features include twin tails, folding wings, a tail section that has vertical stabilizers forward of the elevators, a unique extended wing design known as leading edge extensions or LEX, reinforced landing gear for carrier operations, and wingtip missile racks. Super Hornets today are used as fleet defenders, air superiority fighters, long-range strike aircraft with precision-guided weapons, fighter escort, suppression of enemy air defenses, close air support, maritime strike, reconnaissance, forward air control, and even tanker missions. Essentially, the Super Hornet is capable of performing every mission type in the tactical spectrum, making it the embodiment of a multi-role fighter. Let's take a look at some specifications for the Super Hornet. Length, 18.31 meters. Height, 4.88 meters. Wingspan, 13.62 meters. Maximum speed, Mach 1.8. Empty weight, 14,552 kilograms. Maximum takeoff weight, 29,937 kilograms. Engines, each General Electric F414 GE400 turbofan, 62.3 kilonewtons thrust dry, or 97.9 kilonewtons thrust with afterburner. Thrust to weight ratio, 0.93, or 1.1 with loaded weight and 50% internal fuel. The Super Hornet has an incredible array of weapons it can carry, starting with the internal 20mm M61 Vulcan cannon, along with 11 total hardpoints. Some of the weapon options for these hardpoints are as follows. For air-to-air missions, the AIM-9 Sidewinder and the AIM-120 AMRAAM. For anti-ship operations, the Harpoon and Slam ER. For air-to-ground missions, the Maverick, the AGM-154 Joint Standoff Weapon, paveway laser-guided bombs, and freefall bombs. For suppression of enemy air defenses or SEAD, the HARM missile. This list is by no means exclusive and should serve to demonstrate that if there is an airborne munition in the inventory, the Super Hornet can carry it. Canada is currently considering the Block 3 Super Hornet, which adds the following upgrades from existing Super Hornets. An upgraded mission computer that is 17 times more powerful, known as the Distributed Targeting Processor Network or DTPN mission computer. Feeding battlefield information into the DTPN is a Tactical Targeting Network Technology or TTNT data link. The TTNT data link allows for more communications among other allied ships and aircraft, which further enhances the Super Hornet's battlefield awareness. Additionally, the Block 3 Super Hornets can mount a centerline tank-mounted IRST or Infrared Search Track System. The IRST allows for passive detection of stealthy aircraft like the Chinese J-20 and Russian Su-57. In fact, the IRST has been called a stealth equalizer with detection ranges well over 100 miles. To allow the pilot to access all this information, the Block 3 Super Hornet makes use of ACS or Advanced Cockpit System. The ACS takes former multiple MFD displays and combines them into one touchscreen display. The singular display brings an iPad-like user interface to the cockpit and is planned for use in both the single-seat E models and dual-seat F models. This will allow for customizable representations of critical data as it becomes available. Furthermore, the Block 3 Super Hornet also incorporates some structural improvements to extend its range. Conformal fuel tanks or CFTs are used to add an additional 3,500 pounds of fuel, which will not only help extend range but also increase loiter or patrol times over areas. Along with the CFTs, upgrades include coatings of stealth-enhancing materials and structural enhancements that will reduce the radar cross-section or RCS. A reduction in detectability should allow for the Super Hornet to better survive and thrive in the modern battlefield with ever-increasing peer-level threats. And lastly, structural changes have been incorporated to give the Block 3 Super Hornet an incredible planned service life of 10,000 hours. This will allow the Super Hornets to operate for decades to come. The Super Hornet appears to be a good fit for the RCAF, especially when one considers that Canada is the largest operator of legacy Hornets outside of the US. And while the Super Hornet is a vastly improved version of the Hornet, there are some similarities that should make the transition easier for pilots and maintainers. Next, let's take a look at the Gripen. The Saab JAS-39 Gripen is a Mach 2 single-engine light multi-role fighter which implements fly-by-wire controls and makes use of a relaxed stability design for improved maneuverability. Notable features include a delta wing, forward canards, a single engine, and side air intakes. Manufactured by Saab, a Swedish aerospace company, the Gripen was designed to replace the Draken and the Viggen, both successful previous Saab designs. The Gripen is designed to be easy to maintain and have a quick turnaround time between missions. Let's take a look at some specifications for the Saab Gripen. Length, 15.2 meters. Height, 4.5 meters. Wingspan, 8.6 meters. Maximum speed, Mach 2. Empty weight, 8,000 kilograms. Maximum takeoff weight, 16,500 kilograms. Combat range, 1,500 kilometers. Engine, one GE F414 GE39E producing 57.8 kilonewtons thrust dry or 98 kilonewtons with afterburner. Thrust to weight ratio, 1.04. The Gripen makes use of the internally equipped Mauser BK-27, a 27mm revolver cannon capable of firing 1,700 rounds per minute. For the two-seat version of the Gripen, the cannon is removed to make room for the added pilot. Additionally, the Gripen has 10 hardpoints. The Gripen can carry about 6,500 kilograms of ordnance and equipment. Having been designed as a true multi-role fighter, the Gripen can carry an incredible range of weapons. Some of these include, for air-to-air missions, heat-seeking AIM-9 Sidewinders, IRSTs, or A-Darter missiles. For beyond visual range, AIM-120 AMRAAMs, MBDA Micas, or MBDA Meteor missiles. For air-to-ground missions, Mark 82 bombs, BK-90 cluster bombs, GBU SBD-39 small diameter precision bombs, GBU paveway laser guided bombs, and AGM-65 Maverick air-to-ground missiles. For anti-shipping operations, the RBS-15 standoff missile. The Gripen offers some attractive options for the RCAF, as the Gripen was designed to operate out of rough airfields and Arctic environments. In keeping with Canada's request for local manufacturing, Saab is promising the formation of the Gripen for Canada team, which consists of GE Aviation, CAE, IMP Aerospace and Defense, and Peraton Canada. Next, we will take a look at the only 5th generation fighter on this list, the F-35. The Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II is a 5th generation, single-engine, single-seat, multi-role stealth fighter, which is tasked with performing a variety of missions including strike, air superiority, surveillance, reconnaissance, and electronic warfare. Having been called the most lethal, survivable, and connected fighter in the world, the F-35 is intended to operate until 2070. Lockheed Martin is the primary contractor along with principal partners BAE Systems and Northrop Grumman. The F-35 is an international fighter, with partner nations that include Norway, Australia, Denmark, Canada, and the Netherlands. The F-35 is actually a family of aircraft that is produced in 3 main variants: the CTOL or Conventional Takeoff and Landing F-35A, the STOLVL or Short Takeoff and Vertical Landing F-35B, and the CV Catobar or Catapult Assisted Takeoff but Arrested Recovery F-35C. If selected by Canada, the F-35A variant will be used. Let's take a look at some specifications for the F-35A. Length 15.7 meters. Height 4.4 meters. Wingspan 11 meters. Maximum speed Mach 1.6 at altitude. Empty weight 13,290 kilograms. Maximum takeoff weight 31,751 kilograms. Range 669 nautical miles on internal fuel. Thrust to weight ratio 0.87 at gross weight or 1.07 at loaded weight with 50% internal fuel. Engines: 1 Pratt & Whitney F135 PW100 afterburning turbofan, 120 kilonewtons thrust dry or 190 kilonewtons with afterburner. The F-35A is armed with the internal GAU-22A 25mm 4-barrel rotary cannon with 180 rounds of ammunition. Additionally, the F-35 has 4 internal stations and 2 weapons bays, which are used to maintain its stealth profile, and 6 external hardpoints, 3 under each wing that can be used for non-stealth missions. The internal stations can carry up to 2,600 kilograms, while the external stations can hold up to 6,800 kilograms. Total weapons payload capacity is 8,200 kilograms. The F-35 can carry a diverse range of weapons including, for air-to-air missions, heat-seeking AIM-9X Sidewinders or the AIM-132 ASRAAM. For beyond visual range, AIM-120 AMRAAMs or MBDA Meteor missiles. For air-to-ground missions, the AGM-154 Joint Standoff Weapon, Paveway Laser-Guided Bombs, Mark 20 Rockeye Cluster Bombs, Mark 77 Incendiary Cluster Bombs, the AGM-158 Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile, or the AGM-88 HARM Anti-Radar Missile for suppression of enemy air defenses. For anti-ship operations, the AGM-158C Long Range Anti-Ship Missile, or LRASM, and hopefully one that never gets used, the B-61 Thermonuclear Gravity Bomb. This list is by no means inclusive, as there are currently several future payload options being developed for the F-35. The F-35 certainly has had unprecedented cost overruns, and has taken longer to bring into frontline service than anyone ever thought. However, the program did have some lofty goals and set out not only to be the best 5th generation air-to-everything platform, but also to be made available to allies. As a partner in the program, Canada has a vested interest in acquiring the F-35, as it is already manufacturing parts for the F-35 and is part of the global supply chain for the fighter. And finally, the F-35 is likely to be the most numerous fighter into the near future, making parts and interoperability a strong consideration. One could make the argument that the F-35 is the most future-proofed of the three options for Canada. We've taken a look at the three candidates for the RCAF's replacement for the Legacy Hornet. Now let's take a quick look at the needs of the RCAF. The stated mission of the RCAF is to provide the Canadian Forces with relevant, responsive, and effective air power to meet the defense challenges of today and into the future. Traditionally, the RCAF has focused on air intercept missions in order to defend its airspace and provide coverage over the Arctic. To this end, the fighter that is ultimately selected will need to perform air intercept missions where historically, speed and readiness are of the most importance. On March 24th, the air forces of Finland, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway announced an agreement to operate their combined forces of over 200 fighter planes as a unified Nordic air defense force. This move is a historic first between these countries and was ratified via a Joint Declaration of Intent, or JDI, on March 16th at Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany. United States Air Force General James Hecker, who is also the head of NATO Air Command, was present for the signing. Today, we will take a look at what this means for the region, what fighter planes comprise this newly formed Air Force, and what each jet brings to the table in terms of operational capability. The decision to unite the air forces of four nations under one command carries with it the ultimate goal of being able to operate seamlessly together as one force. This newly formed Air Force rivals that of a large European nation in numbers, and command and control is to be established by developing a Nordic concept for combined air operations, which will be based on an already known and established NATO methodology. It is important to point out that when this agreement was reached, Finland and Sweden were not yet part of NATO. However, on April 3rd, Finland became the 31st member of NATO, and as of this recording, Sweden is expected to formally become a member soon. So the question is, if all four nations are or will soon become part of NATO, why the need for a seemingly separate Nordic Air Force? There are actually four reasons that have been cited in the document which was shared following the agreement. First, combining the Nordic Air Forces allows for integrated operations, planning, and execution. This makes sense since the operating environments and conditions are very similar in the four countries involved. Secondly, the alliance allows for flexible and resilient air basing, meaning runways and maintenance facilities can be used by the partner nations more openly. Then there's the third factor, shared situational awareness. It's hard to imagine, but prior to this agreement, each of the four nations had to conduct their intelligence assessments and tracking of aircraft independently. The new agreement creates a common contiguous defense zone that essentially covers the Baltic Sea. And finally, the fourth reason stated is an allowance for common air education, training, and exercises to be held, allowing crews to cross-train and mutually support each other's forces. Alright, now let's get into the aircraft specifics for each of the four nations involved and what each platform brings to the newly formed alliance. Starting with Norway, who had been operating the Lockheed Martin F-16 Fighting Falcon up until 2022, which has been replaced by the Lockheed Martin F-35A Lightning. Norway has over 50 F-35s and is one of the early adopters of the Lightning, having acquired their first F-35s all the way back in 2017. In fact, Norway was the fourth country to acquire the Lightning after the United States, Israel, and Italy. The F-35 is without a doubt the most numerous and successful fifth-generation stealth fighter, with some 900 examples delivered and over 600,000 flight hours logged on the global fleet. Additionally, the Lightning has also won several high-profile fighter competitions, more on that later. As to what the Lightning brings to the table, we can start with sensor fusion and an airborne command node. Along with stealth or low observability, the F-35 was designed to integrate and leverage allied air assets and air defenses. This integration is so thorough that the F-35 has been often referred to as a quarterback in the sky, capable of directing assets and reading the enemy signals to plan its next moves. The F-35 also makes use of a distributed aperture system, or DAS, which provides 360-degree spherical situational awareness via cameras and sensors placed throughout the aircraft. Additionally, the F-35's fleet is being upgraded to the Block 4 standard, which, among many things, include numerous improvements in computational power, avionics, new weapon options, and even a more powerful radar that can detect and track targets at much longer ranges than today. I've done an entire video on the F-35's upgraded radar. I'll leave a link in the description below. Given the F-35's current and planned capabilities along with its lowering per unit cost, we can begin to see why the Lightning has won virtually every fighter procurement competition it has entered, including those for Finland and Switzerland. Moving on to the next partner in the Nordic Air Defense Agreement, Denmark, which currently operates over 40 F-16s with 27 F-35s on order. The F-16 Fighting Falcon or Viper is a 4th generation fighter which was initially designed as a day air superiority fighter. However, throughout its long and storied career, the F-16 evolved into a true multi-role platform, implementing the first use of relaxed static stability or fly-by-wire flight control system. The F-16 is an agile aircraft and an excellent dogfighter. With over 4,500 examples built, the F-16 is the world's most numerous and combat-proven 4th generation fighter. Although the F-16 is a non-stealth platform, it features low operating costs, high reliability or mission-capable rates, and mission flexibility in both air-to-air and air-to-ground roles. Denmark's F-16s are an excellent placeholder as their new F-35s are delivered and become operational. Next, we turn to Finland, who is currently operating some 50 FA-18Cs, with 64 F-35s on order. Like the F-16, the F-18 or Hornet is a multi-role fighter. However, unlike the F-16, the Hornet was designed for carrier operations and features an arresting hook, folding wings, and landing gear specifically designed to operate off of carriers. Finland's Hornets are land-based, and while also a non-stealthy 4th generation fighter, the F-18 is a combat-proven platform with relatively high mission-capable rates. Moreover, since Finland shares a land border with Russia, Finnish Hornets have extensive experience flying near the border and likely tracking Russian aircraft that are in proximity to their mutual border. Still, the Finnish Hornets are nearing the end of their service lives, which is one reason that Finland has placed the largest order for new F-35s of the 4 Nordic countries. And last but certainly not least is Sweden, which finds itself in a unique position. While Norway, Denmark, and Finland are all moving to the F-35, Sweden is opting for the latest version of the Gripen, the JAS-39E. Aside from being an excellent aircraft, the Gripen is also designed and manufactured in Sweden. The Gripen is an extremely reliable, low-cost-to-operate multi-role fighter designed specifically to operate in the harsh Nordic environment. Today, Sweden operates about 70 of their C&D models, which are powered by a Volvo RM12 engine, a license-built version of the GE F404 engine, similar to those found in legacy Hornets such as the ones operated by Finland. The vastly improved E model of the Gripen will be powered by a General Electric RM16, which is similar to the F414 engines found on the Super Hornet. The E version will also feature advanced avionics and electronic countermeasures, which should provide an offset to the Gripen airframe's 4th generation design. In terms of the Nordic Alliance, the C&D versions will likely be used in similar ways that the 4th generation F-16s and F-18s are used, while the E version of the Gripen will likely be deployed in roles that are more aligned to the F-35's tasking, providing advanced detection along with command and control capabilities in a fighter-sized airframe. The formation of a unified Nordic Air Force is a direct response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year. In terms of deterring and potentially combating Russian aggression, this significant agreement has the potential to benefit all parties involved. While each Air Force brings unique capabilities to the table, they also share many similarities beyond their proximity. Collaborating would enhance the effectiveness and potency of air defense tasks and aerial surveillance, as well as providing greater flexibility and unpredictability in war planning. In today's era of multifaceted aerial threats, ranging from traditional fixed-wing aircraft like fighters and bombers, to low-altitude cruise missiles, swarms of drones, and even hypersonic weapons, pooling resources for air defense makes more sense than pursuing an independent approach. This holds true from both a strategic and economic standpoint, particularly when confronting a common enemy with a potentially larger force. Act 4. The fighter you go to war with. It is often said that history repeats itself. emphasizing the importance of learning from the past to avoid repeating mistakes. It's no secret that tensions are escalating in the Pacific Ocean, especially in the South China Sea. Today, the primary frontline fighter aircraft employed by the U.S. Navy is the esteemed A-18 Super Hornet. This enduring jet possesses versatile capabilities, but is asked to perform a wide variety of missions, making it proficient in various roles without truly excelling in any one area. Introduced in 1999, the Super Hornet, affectionately known as the Rhino among its pilots and crews, has always had significant expectations to fulfill, including replacing the F-14 Tomcat. More on that later in the video. Undeniably, the Super Hornet has been a highly capable multi-role fighter. However, it remains a fourth-generation airframe with relatively limited range. Additionally, many airframes are exhibiting signs of wear and tear from decades of continuous operation. Although replacements like the F-35C are being deployed, and programs like the F/A-XX are under development, in the event of an imminent conflict in the Pacific, the Super Hornet would likely shoulder the majority of the air combat missions for the U.S. Navy. In many ways, the current situation in the Pacific bears some similarities to the start of 1942, when the U.S. found itself embroiled in a conflict with the Imperial Japanese Navy, or IJN. During that time, the Navy relied on the Grumman F-4F Wildcat as its frontline fighter, a durable fighter that paled in comparison to its adversary, the IJN-0. The Zero outmatched the Wildcat in terms of speed, maneuverability, and range. However, as the now famous saying from the Iraq War goes, you go to war with the army you have, which applies equally to the Navy. In 1942, this is exactly what the Navy did, and the outclassed Wildcat would go on to claim a kill-to-loss ratio of 5.9 to 1 in 1942 alone, ultimately ending the war with an overall kill ratio of 6.9 to 1. This serves as a testament to the courage and expertise of the naval aviators who fearlessly piloted these aircraft into combat. The present-day Super Hornet far surpasses the Wildcat in every conceivable way, but at the end of the day, it is not a stealth or fifth-generation aircraft. So what challenges does the F-18 face today? Essentially, we can distill them down to two primary factors. First and foremost is the impending end of production. Boeing has announced that the final Super Hornet will be delivered in 2025, marking the conclusion of over 4 decades of continuous production spanning both the Legacy Hornet and Super Hornet. While there is some optimism that India might choose the Super Hornet as its next fighter, the Dassault Rafale, which India already operates, is widely regarded as the overwhelming favorite. Even if India were to opt for the Super Hornet, Boeing has indicated that it would only extend the production run by 2 years. The second challenge revolves around airframe hours. As the Super Hornet ages, the cumulative number of airframe hours continues to increase. The Block 1 and Block 2 series of Super Hornets have a specified service life of 6,000 hours, with each Super Hornet averaging approximately 300 flight hours per year. Naturally, this figure varies depending on operational tempos, mission parameters, and the distinction between peacetime and wartime operational environments. Maintenance and mission-capable rates can also be influenced by factors such as spare parts availability and the overall budget allocated by the Navy. In order to ensure the continued operational availability of the essential Super Hornet, various measures are being taken. Along with the delivery of more F-35Cs, the development and deployment of drones, and the F/A-XX program still underway, the Navy is actively pursuing strategies to sustain the Super Hornet fleet. One prominent initiative is the implementation of the Life Extension Program, a comprehensive undertaking that encompasses thorough inspections, necessary repairs, and performance-enhancing upgrades. The primary objective is to extend the aircraft's service life from 6,000 flight hours to an impressive 9,000 flight hours. Specific airframes will be granted a Service Life Extension Authorization, or SLEA, which will allow them to fly up to 7,500 hours. To achieve the desired endurance of 9,000 flight hours, airframes will be equipped with a Service Life Extension Program, or SLEP kit. Currently, the entire process typically requires approximately 18 months for the initial aircraft, but Boeing aims to reduce this timeframe to 12 months as the program advances. Additionally, all active Super Hornets will undergo upgrades to meet the rigorous standards of Block 3, which introduces a range of notable enhancements. These include Tactical Targeting Network Technology, or TTNT, which allows the Super Hornet to share data with other platforms and create a common operational picture, bringing 5th gen-like sensor fusion to the Hornet fleet. A Distributed Targeting Processor Network, which increases the computing power and processing speed of the aircraft, enabling it to handle more complex missions along with future upgrades. An upgraded mission computer and gallium nitride radar, together which dramatically increase the computing power and processing speed of the aircraft, which enable it to handle more data points while increasing targeting resolution. New Block 3 airframes will also have a projected 10,000 hour service life. An incredible achievement considering the Super Hornets punishing carrier operations, not just the takeoff and landings, but the saltwater and high humidity it routinely operates in. Previously, we drew a comparison between the Super Hornet and the Grumman Wildcat. Now, let's shift our focus to Grumman's most renowned feline, the F-14 Tomcat, which was retired in 2006. One of the responsibilities the Super Hornet assumed was that of fleet defender, a role previously held by the Tomcat. While the Tomcat incurred higher maintenance costs, its speed and range are sorely missed. Grumman had proposed an upgrade program for the Tomcat called Super Tomcat 21 or ST-21. The ST-21 initiative aimed to utilize composite materials and upgraded GE F-110-29 engine, which would enable the Tomcat to supercruise at Mach 1.3, an enhanced radar system, increased fuel capacity, improved control surfaces, and potentially even thrust vectoring nozzles. Grumman developed the ST-21 in response to the Advanced Tactical Fighter, or ATF competition, which pitted the YF-22 against the YF-23. One other notable feature of the ST-21 was the incorporation of leading-edge extensions, or LEX, a technology that underwent extensive research on Northrop's F-5 series of aircraft, ultimately leading to the development of the F-18 Hornet itself. Interestingly, the LEX additions on the proposed ST-21 project bore some resemblance to those found on the Super Hornet, which was concurrently in development. The ST-21's LEX, coupled with improved control surfaces, would have enhanced takeoff capabilities, reduced landing speeds, and improved the F-14's high alpha performance. Moreover, the inclusion of thrust vectoring GE F-110 engines would have further amplified maneuverability, while the expanded fuel capacity would have provided the Tomcat with increased loiter time and range. Envisioning a supercruising F-14 with thrust vectoring capabilities gives an impression of what the ST-21 could have been. Today, while we can only speculate about the ST-21's potential, the Super Hornet continues to serve as the tip of the spear, potentially for several more decades. In the event of a near-term conflict, this 4th-generation fighter may find itself engaging with 5th-generation adversaries. As was witnessed during World War II, the outcome may hinge on the skill of the pilot rather than the capabilities of the aircraft itself. On the early morning of February 4th, around 4 a.m. local time, an important event unfolded. U.S. Central Command and UK forces found themselves in a situation where they had to take action to defend against what has become an ongoing threat to international shipping. Strikes were conducted against 36 targets across 13 locations. These Iranian-backed Houthi targets included command and control, missile systems, storage facilities, radars, and of course, UAV operations and storage sites. It is important to note that these strike operations are separate and distinct from the multinational freedom of navigation actions currently being performed under Operation Prosperity Guardian. These latest strikes are a direct response to a barrage of recent one-way UAVs, as they're now being called by CENTCOM. These one-way drones were shot down collectively by the USS Carney and Laboon, both of which are Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers. These destroyers use SM-2s to shoot down the drones. Along with this, A-18 Super Hornets from the USS Eisenhower's Carrier Air Wing 3 took part, likely using highly maneuverable AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles. However, the attacks by Houthis have not been limited to one-way aerial drones. In fact, a couple of days ago, a USV, or uncrewed surface vessel, aka a drone boat, was taken out once US Navy forces determined that the vessel was an imminent threat. On that same day, 2 anti-ship missiles were fired by Houthi forces at a merchant vessel. Fortunately, both missiles hit the water and did not damage the ship. Getting back to the Super Hornets, in recent operations in the Red Sea, anti-ship missiles fired by Houthi forces have been successfully intercepted by F-18 crews using the versatile AIM-120 AMRAAM missile. Still, with all these defensive actions, the Houthi forces have not been deterred, and in fact, have continued their attacks on commercial and military vessels. As a result, we have these latest strikes being conducted by US and UK forces. Taking a closer look at the F-18 Hornet family of fighter jets, when it comes to Houthi radar installations, the A-18G Growler, which is essentially a variant of the Super Hornet, has been used. The Growler carries extensive radar jamming equipment and can also use the AGM-88 HARM missile. HARM is short for Homing Anti-Radiation Missile, and it does what it says, homing in on radar emitters and then neutralizing them. Evidently, the Houthis have been using multiple underground storage facilities to house munitions and other materiel. For these targets, the 2,000-pound laser-guided bomb known as the GBU-24 is used. The GBU-24 has a delayed fuse that allows it to penetrate a structure or depth of ground before going off, ensuring that the target is neutralized. The Super Hornet, after all, is a strike fighter and almost purpose-built for missions like these. Aside from Hornets and Growlers, Tomahawk cruise missiles have also been used to attack Houthi command and control, drone sites, and even aircraft parked outside. Remember, some 15% of the world's shipping passes through the Red Sea, and if these attacks by the Houthis were to go unchecked, then world markets could start to feel the impact. As a result, the significance of this action cannot be overstated. By neutralizing this threat, the aim was to protect the freedom of navigation in the Red Sea and make international waters in the region safer and more secure for US Navy vessels and merchant vessels alike. On 22 December 2024, a US Navy FA-18 Super Hornet was shot down, not by an enemy, but by a devastating blue-on-blue friendly fire incident. It was a moment that shook one of the most advanced naval and air forces in the world. How could this happen, and what can we learn to prevent it from happening again? This incident occurred during the high-stakes operations in the Red Sea, a region that has become increasingly dangerous. As you know, Houthi rebels have frequently been targeting commercial shipping with drones and missiles, making this area a flashpoint for conflict. In response, the US Navy, alongside its allies, have been patrolling these waters to protect vital shipping lanes. Operating in such a tense and confined space demands precision and flawless communication. But on that fateful December night, a series of missteps led to disaster. Here's what we know so far and the lessons we must learn. The USS Harry Truman had just entered the Red Sea in support of Operation Prosperity Guardian, and soon began launching precision airstrikes while its escort ships were repelling Houthi attacks. These factors of just entering the area, beginning up-tempo operations while also dealing with incoming fire, likely heavily contributed to the blue-on-blue incident. Still, how did one of the Navy's guided missile cruisers mistake a friendly Super Hornet for a threat? And what happened next may surprise you. This wasn't the only close call that night. The incident. As the Super Hornet approached its carrier, the guided missile cruiser USS Gettysburg mistakenly identified it as a threat. Despite the jet broadcasting its IFF, or Identify Friend or Foe, signals, a misclassification in the missile defense system led to a catastrophic error. A surface-to-air missile, likely an SM-2, was fired. Thankfully, the Super Hornet's crew ejected in time, but survived with minor injuries. Of course, the aircraft was destroyed, leaving everyone asking the same question: how could this happen? Now, here's where it gets even more alarming. We're recently learning that just moments later, a second missile was fired, this time apparently at another Super Hornet flying nearby. This second jet barely escaped, taking evasive maneuvers that caused the missile to miss by only 100 feet. This second close call nearly turned one tragedy into two. There are some reports surfacing now that the USS Gettysburg turned off the guidance system on the second missile, which could explain why it missed. The fact that the same cruiser almost shot down 2 friendly jets raises serious concerns about the reliability of our missile defense systems and communications protocols. And while the Navy's investigation is ongoing, we already know enough to draw some important lessons. The Navy's preliminary report highlights several key failures. First, communications breakdowns. Vital information wasn't relayed in time. Second, misclassification by the missile system. The jet's IFF signals weren't recognized correctly. And third, lack of redundancy in identification protocols. Backup systems failed to prevent the misfire. This chain of errors reveals just how complex and dangerous modern warfare can be, even when fighting an unconventional enemy like the Houthis. Lessons learned. In response to this incident, the Navy has announced several steps to ensure this doesn't happen again. Number 1. Enhanced IFF technology. Upgrades to ensure friendly aircraft are always correctly identified. Number 2. Stricter communication protocols. Better coordination between air and surface forces to prevent misunderstandings. Number 3, and perhaps most important, comprehensive training. New drills that are designed to simulate these exact scenarios, giving crews the skills to respond under pressure. Hopefully these measures aim to not only address the immediate issues, but also set a higher standard for military aviation and surface warfare. Friendly fire is a tragic reality of warfare, and it's not a new problem. From ancient battlefields to today's high-tech military operations, such incidents remind us of the critical importance of communication, technology, and training. Hopefully, the downing of the Super Hornet is a wake-up call. Operating in the narrow, volatile waters of the Red Sea is challenging enough without the added risk of friendly fire. By addressing the factors that led to this incident, the Navy can turn this tragedy into an opportunity for growth, making the skies and seas safer for our warfighters. You're probably wondering how we got here. In the chaos of a high-threat mission in the Red Sea, a $60 million US Navy fighter jet vanished overboard. How does a cutting-edge Super Hornet just fall into the ocean? Let's dive in. The USS Harry S. Truman, a 100,000-ton symbol of American naval power, was operating deep in the Red Sea. But this wasn't a routine cruise. The ship and her strike group were on high alert, navigating one of the most dangerous maritime zones in the world. As you know, in recent months, the waters off Yemen have become a battlefield. The Iran-backed Houthis have launched wave after wave of drone and missile attacks, each one probing for a weakness, each one daring the Truman to make a mistake. On this particular day, sailors aboard the Truman were performing normal operations inside the hangar bay. One of the Navy's workhorses, an A-18 Super Hornet, was carefully being towed by a move crew. Inch by inch, they guided this $60 million fighter towards a safe parking position. Then, without warning, the situation changed. Incoming Houthi missiles and drones were detected. The Truman's captain had seconds to react. To evade a potential direct hit, the massive carrier initiated a hard evasive maneuver, an aggressive turn designed to throw off enemy targeting. As the Truman heeled over, the sailors towing the Super Hornet fought to control the jet. But they were battling not just momentum, but the full fury of physics itself. The ship's sharp roll and shift sent a tidal force of momentum through the hangar deck. And despite desperate efforts to secure it, the tow tractor and the FA-18 began to slide. In a matter of heartbeats, 60,000 pounds of fighter jet and towing gear were ripped from the deck and plunged overboard into the Red Sea. Now, fortunately, the move crew had moments to react, pulling clear just before the massive aircraft disappeared into the waves. One sailor sustained a minor injury, but most importantly, all personnel survived. I want to make that very clear. Now here's the reality of war, and make no mistake, this is a war zone. Well, when you're in the middle of a war zone and under missile attack, even the most advanced Navy in the world can lose a $60 million fighter jet in the blink of an eye. But what caused this chaos wasn't just bad luck. It was the brutal reality of operating in a combat zone where threats come without warning and every second counts. Now, unfortunately, the loss of the Super Hornet wasn't an isolated fluke. It's a symptom of a much larger, much deadlier storm that's brewing across the Red Sea. For months now, the USS Truman Strike Group and every other American or Allied vessel in the region has been locked in a dangerous, high-stakes game with the Iran-backed Houthi rebels. Armed with Iranian drones, cruise missiles, and anti-ship weapons, the Houthis have transformed the Red Sea from a critical global trade route into an active war zone. And these aren't just random shots in the dark anymore. They're coordinated, escalating, and aimed directly at American ships. Now, unfortunately, the Truman Strike Group's deployment reads like a checklist of near disasters. In February, the Truman collides with a merchant vessel while maneuvering under threat. In December, an A-18 Super Hornet from the Truman is mistakenly shot down by the USS Gettysburg. And now, of course, we have this Super Hornet falling into the ocean. And ongoing, we have relentless Houthi missile and drone attacks that are hammering US naval positions. Here's the reality. Each incident chips away at readiness. Each emergency maneuver risks lives and equipment. The margin for error is razor thin. And in the chaotic seas off of Yemen, even a tiny mistake can have catastrophic consequences. Now, the threat isn't just the missiles that you see coming. It's the constant grinding pressure. The 24/7 fight to stay one step ahead, to anticipate the next attack before it materializes. And when sailors are forced to operate under these conditions for days, weeks, and then months, well, fatigue and chaos begin to creep in. And unfortunately, that's when things start to break, whether it's steel or the human spirit. And I'm not saying that the spirit of these sailors is broken. I'm just saying it's putting an incredible strain on all crew members. Now, of course, the Truman Strike Group has survived every attack so far, but at what cost? And losing a $60 million jet is only the beginning. Because the longer this shadow war drags on, the higher price we're going to pay. Now, after finding out that everybody's okay, when a fighter jet falls into the sea, the next thing most people think about is the money. And they're not wrong. A single F-18 Super Hornet, as you know, carries a price tag of more than $60 million. But the real cost isn't just measured in dollars and cents. It's measured in trust, in morale, in the strain that's placed on every sailor who watches another piece of their fighting strength slip away. And with these longer deployments, every emergency maneuver, every collision, every evasive action burns through the precious resilience of the fleet. And when the sea takes a fighter jet, it's not just the machine that's lost. It's months, years of training. And to all you maintainers out there, it's the sweat equity that you put in to keep these birds flying. It's the pride of the pilots who called that jet home. And here's the uncomfortable question that no one wants to talk about. If the Houthis can force a $12 billion carrier strike group into the defensive, well, what happens next? Because losing one Super Hornet might just seem survivable today, but if the pressure keeps rising, if the pattern continues, the next thing we lose might be far more than just an aircraft. And I hope I'm wrong on that one. Now let's look at what happens next. The moment that Super Hornet slipped beneath the waves, a new operation began. Not a combat mission, but an investigation. Now, the US Navy has already launched a full inquiry into exactly what happened aboard the USS Truman that day. And as you know, every tow line, every anchor point, every evasive maneuver is now under the microscope. The investigators are going to have to ask the hard questions. Were standard towing procedures followed? Did the crew have enough warning before the ship turned hard? Was the emergency maneuver necessary or avoidable? But deeper than technical reports and checklist reviews lies a bigger, more urgent question. How sustainable is this kind of constant high-pressure warfare at sea? Day after day, under threat from drones, missiles, and asymmetric attacks, that margin for error shrinks. Training can prepare you for battle, but what prepares you for an endless siege? Now, today, the Truman Strike Group remains mission capable. But as threats grow bolder and the tempo of battle accelerates, a hidden toll mounts. And in the unforgiving waters of the Red Sea, only one thing is certain. You can replace planes, you can repair ships, but some things, once lost, are gone forever. Now, at the end of the day, the loss of a $60 million Super Hornet is just the most visible part of the story. Because what's really happening out here, day after day and night after night, is a battle of endurance. A battle not just against drones and missiles, but against fatigue, against pressure, against a relentless grind that wears even the strongest steel thin. The brave men and women of the USS Truman Strike Group are holding the line, not just with technology, but with their courage, their grit, and their sacrifice. Every sailor on that flight deck knows the risks. Every crew chief guiding a jet under tow knows how fast things can go wrong. And yet, they keep showing up. They keep fighting. They keep standing their watch. Because in today's battle space, war threats come fast, low, and unpredictable. It's not just about what you fly, it's about that will to endure. And in a world where danger can strike at any moment, dominance isn't just about firepower, it's about resilience. And resilience is something that no enemy missile, no drone, and no stormy sea can ever take away from America's fighting spirit. The Hornet and later the Super Hornet were never the fastest fighters to operate from an aircraft carrier. They never had the longest range either. Let me put that in plain English. The Hornet was basically the Navy's reliable pickup truck. Maybe it wasn't the flashiest thing on the flight deck, but you could load it up, send it out, and ask it to do just about anything. Fleet defense, precision strike, close air support, suppression of enemy air defenses, reconnaissance, aerial refueling, and with the Growler variant, electronic warfare. Imagine this. You're standing on the flight deck of an American aircraft carrier somewhere in the Pacific. One Super Hornet launches to intercept an unidentified aircraft approaching the carrier group. Another leaves loaded with precision-guided bombs. A third is carrying a buddy refueling store, and just down the deck, a Growler is getting ready to launch and jam enemy radar systems. All those aircraft share essentially the same family tree, and sometimes all of those missions can really be happening from the same carrier on the same day. That's an extraordinary amount of capability to get out of one basic aircraft design, especially when you remember where this whole story started. As we've seen today, the Hornet family traces its roots back to Northrop's little YF-17 Cobra, an aircraft that actually lost the Air Force competition that ultimately produced the F-16. Think about that for a second. The airplane that lost that competition eventually became the foundation of one of the most important naval aviation families of the modern era. Now, here's why that matters. Military aircraft are usually, especially previously, designed around a particular set of requirements. But wars change, technology changes, missions change. And the airplane that survives isn't always the one that looked the best on the original spec sheet. Sometimes it's the airplane that can simply keep adapting and keep fighting. And the Hornet has been adapting for nearly half a century. But of course, airplanes don't get younger. Every catapult launch puts stress on the airframe, and then every arrested landing does it again. Every deployment adds more flight hours to the airframe and to the crew, and especially the maintainers. And every new enemy radar, missile, fighter, and air defense system raises the bar just a little higher. The Navy has answered that challenge with new computers, new sensors, new weapon systems, and structural upgrades that have produced increasingly capable versions of the Super Hornet. But there does come a point where you have to ask a very simple question. What would you do? You have an aircraft that has served you reliably for decades. Your pilots know it, your maintainers know it, your carriers are built around operating it, and of course your supply system supports it. But with newer threats appearing and now 6th generation fighters entering service, how long do you keep upgrading the airframe you already have before you finally replace it? That's the question that the Navy is dealing with right now. The Super Hornet has been flying from American carriers for more than a quarter century. The F-35C has now joined it on the flight deck, and eventually another generation of Navy fighters will follow it. Here's hoping for the FA-XX. But the bottom line is this: look at an American carrier sailing toward a dangerous part of the world today and into the near future. You're still going to see Super Hornets lined up on that deck. And after all these years, the Navy is still asking the Rhino to get the job done. So here's what I'd like you to remember. The Hornet's greatest achievement may not be any particular weapon, radar, upgrade, or combat mission we've covered in this video. It may simply be that when the United States Navy needed an airplane to do something, there's usually a way to make a Hornet do it. But as the recording of this video, the Super Hornet production line is set to wind down next year. Tell me what you took from all this. When the last Super Hornet eventually makes its final arrested landing, how do you think history will remember the Rhino? As an aircraft that stayed around too long, or as one of the most useful fighters ever to operate from an American aircraft carrier? Let me know what you think in the comments below. This is Tog. Thanks for watching till the end, and now you know.